So a number of different announcements here. The key one is that Facebook will stop taking new political ads a week before Election Day. Why just a week? Why not stop taking ads now or even forever, as some companies like Twitter have done?
The reason why we've taken this, and it's an unprecedented step, but of course this is an unprecedented election taking place in extraordinary times. So unprecedented times need require unprecedented measures. And the reason we're doing it for the last week is that at the very tail end of a campaign, if ads are run which are particularly false or misleading or polarizing, you don't have time for you in the media, for opposing campaigns to scrutinize and challenge and contest what is said on that ad. So we're trying to create this sort of guardrail, if you like, in the final week of the campaign, so that any ads that are run, and the targeting arrangements can be adjusted by the campaign so that they mobilize voters, all of that's legitimate, but they can't run new ads, which if they were run at the last minute in the final hours or the final days of the campaign, they just simply wouldn't be the time for them to be properly scrutinized and if necessary debunked and contested. So that's why we've put in this measure. And crucially, it's important for your viewers to appreciate that all the ads that are run, all political ads that are run on Facebook now are lodged in an ads library, which is probably the most transparent version of its kind anywhere, including in radio, television, print media, so that anyone can see who's paid for an ad, who it's being directed at, what the different messages and variants are. So there'll be maximum transparency combined with this new limitation on no new ads being produced in the final week of the campaign.
That said, Mark Zuckerberg today made no indication that the policy on the content of political ads is changing. What about the critics who say this is piecemeal, this doesn't do enough to protect the vote, or the real problem, which is that Facebook allows misinformation and even lies in political ads to persist?
Well, I don't think no major outlet, no major operation in Silicon Valley seeks to try and adjudicate on the exaggerations, half-truths and characterizations that politicians say, particularly about each other. Political speech is always full of one candidate's exaggerating their virtues and another candidate exaggerating the vices of the opponent. And so there's a reason why no major player in Silicon Valley has tried to kind of enter into that and somehow be the arbiter of complete accuracy and truth. We remove, of course we do, we have community standards against violence, hate, and all sorts of other things that we don't want on our platform. And we act where we must in order to remove posts. We've removed posts, for instance, from the president in recent weeks and months. But on the whole, we think that politicians in an open democracy should be able to say what they want to voters, and that indeed they should be able to say what they want about each other within those guardrails. One of the significant announcements that we have additional announcements we made today, and in fact we've just acted on it in the last few hours on a post posted by President Trump, is that we're going to apply much more visible, much more aggressive labels to posts where there is any question in the post about sort of casting doubt on the efficacy, the legitimacy of voting methods. And we're sort of asserting very clearly for our users through these labels that, for instance, voting by mail is a trustworthy way of voting in the election.
How concerned are you about election night itself, that the results could be contested, that there could be chaos? How much of a risk does Facebook itself face there?
Yeah, I think it's a very, very real risk. And partly because many more people are likely, quite understandably, in a pandemic to vote by mail, and mail-in ballots tend to be counted, of course, later than in-person votes. There is likely to be this discrepancy between the immediate picture that emerges on election day and the hours afterwards and what happens in the days, perhaps weeks following it. And for that reason, we will be starting very soon using our voter information center very actively in people's feeds on Instagram and Facebook. We're going to be constantly repeating to people that, this time they shouldn't expect an immediate result. And people should be attuned and accustomed to the idea that it might take quite a bit longer this time. Okay. It might be very contentious. And crucially, where candidates declare victory before the results of the elections are officially certified, we will label that to make sure that the users of our services know that those declarations of victory are premature.
Meantime, Nick, market selling off today, tech especially, Facebook down 4%. What's your take on what's driving this and how big a concern it is?
Do you know what? I'm not a great sort of market commentator. I don't think it would help remotely if I were to start passing comment on the ups and downs and the vagaries of the markets. We just concentrate, particularly in this election season in the United States, to make sure that our users continue to derive benefit and joy and utility from our apps. They do so in huge and in growing numbers around the world, whilst also playing our role in safeguarding the integrity of the US and many, many other elections taking place around the world.
Joy may be hard to find in this current environment. We've got a pandemic, we've got a frost in U.S.-China relations, an economic recession. On the back of Mark's appearance on Capitol Hill, how are all of these recent events impacting your position on regulation, and specifically tech regulation?
So I want to be very clear. We at Facebook feel that there need to be new rules for the internet. Companies like Facebook, they're young. I mean, Facebook is only 15 years old. It's a new technology which has erupted in recent years. And like all new sort of technological evolutions or revolutions, they need to be framed within rules which are adopted through democratic debate and by lawmakers accountable to voters. So in areas like privacy and data portability and what kind of speech is and is not acceptable, and crucially on some of the things we just discussed, what role should social media play in elections? How should political ads be deployed or not on our surfaces? All of those things are areas where we believe in the long run, it shouldn't be for private companies to make those decisions. That's not, in the long run, right. The rules need to be made by the rule makers, and they are people who are democratically elected by the people of this country and other democracies around the world.